What's up, Ari? My name's Jesse from Iowa City, Iowa. Is there something wrong with the SEC? They are 3-6 against Power 5 teams so far this year, and those 3 wins are a horrible Virginia team, Mississippi State beating Arizona in overtime, and freaking Cal. Is there something wrong with the SEC? I know stars matter and all that, but 3-6, and the 3 wins were against bad teams, and 2 of them were really down to the wire. Thank you.
I know stars matter and all. Had to get that jab in there, huh, Jesse? Well, it is interesting right there because it is bizarro land in the final year of the Pac-12, but the Pac-12 seems to be the deepest, most fun league, and they have all their powers that were supposed to be interesting teams this year intact with 2-0 records. And of course, let's just go through it. Georgia is 2-0, 45-3 win over Ball State. I don't think that we're going to have very many conversations about Georgia this year in terms of them being a disappointment, because I don't think they play a ranked team till November at this rate. And it's only getting worse. If they don't make the playoff this year, then something went way off the rails there. I was at the Alabama game. Texas handled their business. I thought they physically dominated them for a large portion of that game and probably could have won by more. So you have the Hallmark program, or one of the 2 Hallmark programs of that conference, losing for the first time in double digits in over a decade, I think, on their home floor or home field. LSU obviously has their loss to Florida State. Ole Miss was struggling with Tulane. Texas A&M got their doors blown off by Miami. Wake Forest beat Vandy. The list goes on. We don't have to even go down the list of what's going on in Florida. One. Yeah, Ole Miss dodged one, and Michael Pratt didn't play. So like that,
and they were still struggling early.
Tulane was playing with their backup quarterback, and I would mention Florida, but I don't want Dave to grow hair and then that hair catch on fire. So there's a lot to talk about. But guys, what is your thought process of why the SEC is off to a slow start this year?
I mean, obviously NIL is ruining the sport. The SEC's just got to catch up.
It's the only explanation, I think. Yeah,
they got to do something to get those collectives humming, right?
Yeah. If they could just get some more revenue going in the SEC, hopefully they could catch up.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good explanation last night, too, of just like you came into the year and you have the 2 big-time teams, or the 3 big-time teams, all going through transitional situations with their quarterbacks. Obviously, Georgia's doing it, too. They haven't played anybody who can test them yet. But, the thing that I think is most interesting about this whole thing is that if Alabama beats Texas and you've got Georgia and Alabama sitting at 2-0, you probably have a different viewpoint of the conference from top to bottom, because when you're teams that are competing for national championships are still, kind of in Death Star mode, it kind of changes things a little bit. I do think that maybe this bleeds into a little bit of an Alabama discussion. We had a little bit of that on Saturday night after the games, but the question that I have more than anything is with Alabama, what's going on with the quarterback development, and how do you have all these recruits on your team and not have a viable game-breaking option at the skill positions like that?
Yeah, I think when you look at the SEC as a whole, I mean, we talked about it on the quarterback show coming into the season, and I started off the show saying, woof, this is a rough year for SEC quarterbacks. And there's a lot of things that go into a lot, but sometimes it might just be that simple. The SEC doesn't have great quarterbacks, and as a result, we're seeing them not have a ton of great teams. Meanwhile, the Pac-12 has a ton of continuity, a ton of star power, and it's just like, deep analysis here, but like, why did Alabama lose? They didn't have great quarterback play. Okay. I don't know that Texas had great quarterback play, but they had good quarterback play. Right. And you look around the SEC and I don't see a lot of game breakers, a ton of impact players playing quarterback. And you look in the Pac-12, who is 19-3, and I see them everywhere. And I think sometimes it might just be that simple.
I looked this up. So last year, SEC versus Power 5, not counting bowl games, right? Just regular season. There's 15 games. You want to guess what the SEC's record was in the 15 games?
13-2.
Melvin?
I'm going to say 11-4.
10-5. 10-5.
All right.
But the 5 were legitimately good teams. 2 of them lost to Florida State. Auburn lost to Penn State. Missouri got whooped by K-State. And then, I believe there was a loss to Wake Forest as well. So at least defensible last year.
Yeah. I mean, LSU is the one that jumps out. I know Florida State's good, but LSU got punked. And then, I think Texas is just good, but Alabama losing on its home field is embarrassing. And we dug into that last night. A&M is pretty. There's just a lot of losses that aren't just losses. They're like, they make you perk up and say, like, what's going on there? Like A&M, you have to look at the wholesale program after a loss like that and say, like, what's wrong with us? It's not just like, well, like Texas, Bama, to some degree, we knew it was wrong with Bama, but those are two good teams going head to head. Texas wins that game. I don't come away from that game saying like Alabama's screwed. I think with all my skepticism about Alabama coming into the season, I have said, chill on the dynasty. I think Bama is one quarterback recruit away from being fine again. And, I don't know that guy is on campus right now, but we'll see.
They certainly have recruited quite a few.
Yes. And maybe this is something that needs to be written about tonight even. But why is that person not on the team right now? Is it misevaluation? Is it poor development? Is it a combination of both? With the way that they have recruited the position, you would think that one of the 4 or 5 dudes that are in that room would be, it doesn't have to turn into Bryce Young overnight, but would be somebody that you can go, hey, this guy's got it. And it might take some time for him to kind of grow in within himself to reach that point. But it's like you watch the Jalen Milroe game performance in the Texas game, and I think that you have a clear and identifiable plan to stop him if you're a team that kind of has the same talent. Like it's not going to be enough for most of the teams that they play still this year, and I still think that's probably at least a 9-win team at worst. But when they start getting on the field with Georgia and LSU and some of those teams that can go athlete for them, at least with the top 22 players that are on the field, you stop the guy. You rush him. You make him feel uncomfortable in the pocket. Spy him so he can't run around a little bit and make him throw it. And next thing you know, it's like every single play was the same last night.
I thought it was interesting too, Ari, last night. I'm sure you noticed, like Texas trusted a freshman linebacker in Anthony Hill to play the spy role because it wasn't really that complicated. Like it
really wasn't.
You just got to play that space. Yeah.
I mean, I think, I don't think it's a recruiting issue, and I'm not even sure it's a development issue. It's probably evaluation. But, I remember Ty Simpson. I mean, I live out here in Tennessee. Ty Simpson lived about an hour away from me, and they were talking about him like a generational type talent. Tennessee was crushed when they lost him, and they lost him out of their own backyard in the middle of that coaching transition. And you don't hear Ty Simpson's name at all. Tyler Buchner, we can sort of, it's whatever. And maybe, Max, I might consult you, our portal authority out here. Might have been a guy out there that Alabama might have been sniffing around and didn't get. He might be helping them. But so I'm going to say evaluation, and the turnover at coordinator doesn't help. I think there is there's an offensive line problem. I thought Alabama was going to move on from Eric Wolford after last season. They did not. They stuck with him. So it's a lot of things, but they don't have the offensive line to run the kind of offense that would make Jalen Milroe look as good as he can.
But do they have the offensive skill talent to go to somebody else?
I don't know that last night going to another quarterback would have helped or changed the outcome. I don't believe that.
Do you think that are just your perspective being there, watching it with your own 2 eyes, if you plug Sam Hartman into that game, does Alabama win? I mean, that's not a lock, right?
No. Yeah. I was actually leaning towards no on that one because the thing that I was thinking like in the third quarter before Alabama, got a few drives there and put some pressure on Texas heading into the final quarter of the game. Like I was on high alert for a quarterback change. And I thought, well, this isn't working. Whatever they're doing offensively isn't going to happen. It's not going to be enough to win the game. Are they going to bring in Buchner to see if he can throw it around a little bit more effectively? And then I caught myself thinking, like, do you have the offensive line to protect a guy that might not be 100% comfortable? Do you have the receiver that can go up and get a 50-50 ball? Jace McClellan, I think, rushed for less than 70 yards last night. They tried the murder ball thing, and even that wasn't working. So I don't know if the sole blame goes on poor quarterback play. But I think that your offense has to be designed around a certain type of player. And I've covered teams in the past that have had 2 very good quarterbacks that were very different styles and they struggled immensely to try to figure out how to use them when they were both in the game because they didn't know how to call the game differently. So, you know, Jason
Spangler that room
here
is like kind of in this transitional spot too, where Jalen Miller was recruited by Steve Sarkisian, flipped from Texas right after they got Quinn Ewers. You've got Simpson and Lonergan recruited, I believe, mostly by Bill O'Brien, right?
Yeah,
I believe so.
And then you've got Tommy Rees coming in, inheriting these guys, going through spring with them, trying to figure out how do they fit what he does. Then he brings in Tyler Buckner, his guy. Obviously, he's landed a commit in Julian Sand, but it's sort of like, I don't know. You kind of wonder. It's like, truth serum on Tommy Rees. Like, what does he think of his room? You know,
I think we saw it in his face in the booth last night.
that was pain.
I think we saw it.
I was wondering if we were going to see like the F-bombing kind of shot we've seen before from Tommy Rees at Notre Dame. That was a very depressing shot of him up in the box.
That was seriously, the Alabama murder ball is going to work against most teams. It's not. I didn't think it was going to work against Texas. It's not going to work against LSU's front. It's not going to work against Georgia, and it might be, it might not be enough against maybe a team or two, but it's going to work against most of the SEC. I think their offensive line is good enough to do that. But when they go up against these teams, and when you're playing at Alabama and you have the standard that Alabama does, where if you don't make the playoff, the sky is falling. It's not enough to get you there. And I think, all of our perspective reads on the situation when they bring in Tyler Buckner, where it's like, that Tyler Buckner, not exactly a world beater. All of those alarm bells, I think, were pretty valid and were legitimized in what we saw against a Texas team that, I think is very good, but I don't think is world beaters. So, Bama's going to play some world.
I want to hear what you think.
Be sold on Texas till they're 12-0, though. I think that's kind of where he's at.
Fair.
But Max, what was you've spent a lot of time. You used to live in Austin, covered this team for a long time. Watching that game last night, where was your head at in terms of what you saw there and what your expectations were for this team?
Offensive side, I thought pretty masterful. I mean, kind of I wouldn't say masterpiece, but pretty masterful.
Schematically, it was. I'm with you.
Yeah. And I think that you saw, that's as good as it's been with Sark in terms of just we are maximizing all the firepower we've got here, minimizing mistakes, no turnovers from Ewers. I believe no sacks from Ewers, right?
Yeah,
no sacks.
Crazy. So as good of an offensive, 34 points, right? It wasn't 50, but like as good of an offensive performance in that setting as you could possibly ask for. And Ari, you saw it, like defensively, like shoot, man. They're physical now. They're
like,
fast.
Is their defensive line
the ball. Like they just do their job,
Yeah. The thing that is interesting to me, and I've read a lot of comments because some teams have, played some games against overmatched opponents and kind of look like they're going through the motions. And then you've seen some other teams like Florida State, for instance, that have played with a passion and they fly to the football. And there's like an athleticism there that is coupled with that passion that makes you feel like something's bigger there. And I thought that we got that from Texas, and it's like there's a lot of X's and O's things that you can break down from the Texas game. I think the fact that they didn't allow a single sack in that game was incredible, considering what we know about that Alabama defense. And I thought that the thing about the offensive game plan that was so masterful is that nothing seemed overly complicated. You had a lot of passes into the flats and short, intermediate routes to the sideline. Quinn Ewers was comfortable. They knew exactly when to take the shots, and it just didn't seem like things were it was surgical, but it wasn't hard. So for me, if they end up losing to a team that David is expecting them to lose, it's just inexplicable to me. So I think that this year is different. I hope to not be proven wrong. And, this is the first time that Texas has beaten a top 5 team in the preseason since 2005. And I think that turned out pretty well for them. So we'll see how it goes.